Hello, hello again. Cool. I have a couple of disparate points that I want to talk about today. Not really based so much on the readings or listening. I didn't do too much of that today, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, I think one of the biggest things that came out today as I was watching a couple of political videos was just the extent of the ignorance of so many political commentators, just how uninformed they are, and needlessly so. That you guys saw a video of a black woman calling a black guy to whom she was speaking over the phone. Um, well, she accused him of having white privilege. And clearly, like, if you'd done any sort of research on the person to whom you're about to speak, which I would just call basic due diligence, you're going to be able to ascertain at least the rudimentary elements of the person that are going to keep you from looking like an absolute buffoon. And so it's incredible. And it's incredible, too, that people come to so many asinine conclusions, or if not asinine, at least unsubstantiated, that they'll just make large conclusions based off of really no data, if any data, incredibly anecdotal and qualitative rather than quantitative mass and actually representative of anything. Like I saw a video where someone was saying that our generation is lazy because it's a learned behavior from our parents, and that's first off a big conclusion to come to about our generation, and then let alone to ascribe to it to our parents, and what's more, in a third way, then say that it's a learned behavior. Like, where is the evidence for any one of those three elements of the assertion? It's incredible, and no one ever questions that, and everyone does it, and it's just incredible how uninformed people are. Um, which is why I think like Ben Shapiro can like wreck uh, liberals, as a lot of people call it, is because people just are stupid, and they're I don't mean they're stupid. Um, some people are definitely stupid about it. Even if they're not stupid, they're stupid about it. Smart people can be stupid about things. It's just incredible. Um, Two, I think it's foolish in doing a lot of research on think tanks and different conservative organizations. So many of them talk about wanting to advance the free market and things that people have no interest in. The trick is you have to connect it to something that they care about, and then um, show how it's relevant. Relevance rises. People rise in popularity to the extent that they're relevant. So don't talk about free markets. Talk about the effects of free markets that they actually care about. Talk about, I don't know, like being able to have a job of your choosing, of being able to be a painter if you want to be a painter, and then tie that to capitalism. I guess the way you connect with people, that's the way you sell them on these obscure, if not obscure, marginal, and in some cases, um, yeah, in some cases, obscure topics. Like, no one really cares about free markets. No one really cares about these technical terms that we have for these basic human realities. Talk about people as people. You're only going to alienate yourself by speaking in the esoteric. It's stupid. Understand the esoteric. Understand the theological or philosophical underpinnings of a topic. But my gosh, don't talk to people like that. It's the hallway test. Can you realistically imagine overhearing it in a hallway, or maybe in a bathroom? Something like that. A hallway might be better. If you can, then don't talk to people about that type of thing. It's just stupid. You're just wasting air. Let me see if I have anything else that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I think there's a lot of room to create really simple arguments. And PragerU does this to an extent. But if you realize that the vast majority of people hold on to their beliefs for only a couple of reasons, really there's the foundational base reason, and then there are the reasons that they proffer to justify it. There's a good book, Why Good People are Divided. I think it's by Jonathan Haidt. I think it is. I forget what it's called, but basically it says that people are elephants, or that our emotions are an elephant and our rationality is the elephant driver. Like, sure, it can kind of direct the elephant, but really it's up to the elephant. And in the same way, people aren't incredibly rational. They're pretty emotional, and so you have to figure out what are the emotional causes that lead them to this thing, and then show how your beliefs actually lead to that conclusion. Like if they care about equality for women, well, you know, talk about how abortion is actually or like a lot of women's rights is actually demeaning to women, and how if you actually care about women, it's because of X, Y. You should care about conservative stuff because of X, Y, and Z, and just do that in a more sophisticated way. Um, yeah, and then to those who actually are swayed by one or two good arguments, like the people who are driven by emotions, figure out those people, and then figure out the people who are kind of on the fence in a sense. And what I mean by on the fence is not that they're undecided; they might be swayed in one way or another. If they were given a binary option, they might choose, for instance, pro-choice. But there are people who are susceptible to being convinced. They're willing to be convinced. And they don't have a lot of good arguments behind them. And so these are the people who offer a lot of the general platitudes of, oh, I believe it's a woman's body, things like that, and on the pro-choice thing. And all you have to do is have incredibly simple and irrefutable and obvious and morally obvious, I guess, not intellectually, morally obvious conclusions. And then I think those types of people will change their mind. You have to treat people differently according to their station, where they are in their, I suppose, like philosophical journey toward truth, or their final position, if not truth. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think that's one of the best ways is like show them that they already believe in what you're saying, and that what you're saying is just a different form than what they've heard. It's like when Christianity overcame paganism, the way it did it was in part by showing that Christianity was the summation of paganism, that all of paganism could be subsumed into Christianity, that you thought you were worshiping Jupiter or Mars, but in reality, you were just worshiping a facet, or what you construed to be, conceived, whatever. God, Jesus. And so that's the way to do it. Obviously, my conclusions here, like I criticized earlier, aren't based on a lot of evidence apart from anecdotes and I suppose just basic reasoning, but they seem to me to be true. And I'd be surprised if their opposite was held to be the case. Overall, I'm just satisfied with how many. It's incredible how many conservative organizations there are, and how many, of course, liberal on the opposite side organizations there are. Although I haven't looked up a lot of the liberal organizations, I just assume that it's true. They all shoot at the same thing. They all talk about abortion, this, that, or whatever, and they're all think tanks. My gosh, like nothing. Like, and of course, I don't know the extent of their effect, but I just have to imagine it's marginal. You just get a few big bankrollers to fund your project, and then you go out and do it. And like, oh, you work on college campuses, and you host some rallies and some talks, and then that's it. It's like, gosh, like who cares? Like, is that really the most effective way to do things? Like, Turning Point USA tries, I don't know, sway student government in college elections. It's like, was my conservatism influenced by Charlie, whatever his name was, when I was in college? Like, no. Like, are those really the pressure points of someone's moral philosophical development? Of course not. It's so stupid. It's like, who are the actual people that are party to someone's moral, rationalistic, and philosophical and political development? Focus on those people. Like student government, like, is that going to win it? Like, did us having like Trump broadly? Again, I'm not a huge Trump supporter, but he's more aligned to the conservative party than Hillary. Like, did that win us conservatism? Like, did that win us new soldiers into the army? Like, of course not. It's just stupid. It's like, focus on where society's pressure points are. Like, if you think about like roads, like here's an analogy: roads. in society are a pressure point, that are necessary in so many different ways, and are susceptible to great disturbance, that if there's one car accident, then it can screw everything up. And that's just to say that there are parts of society, as there are parts of people, that play a disproportionate role in the functioning of that society or individual. And so the wise person, apply Pareto's principle, will focus on those elements. Don't waste your time on this other stuff. Like, so many organizations are focused on rational argumentation. Yeah, sure, that's a facet, but it's such a marginal component for A, the vast majority of people, and then B, even within that minority group that is persuaded rationally, how much of them are persuaded? How much of their being persuaded is rational? Because Group A might have been none, but Group B might be like 15%. It's not 90%. It's not 100%. If it was, like everyone would be pro life. Like, all of the scientific arguments are on the side of pro life, and this is, I think, also too a good way to tell who's got the weaker argument, is who shifts ground the most. Because then, if you're shifting ground, you're clearly just trying to justify a preconceived notion, a preconceived belief with argumentation, that even if you're proved wrong there, then you're still going to believe what you say, because the pro-choice argument has evolved. It hasn't gone from one thing into a greater thing with that same initial substance. It's entirely changed form. It's now, at bottom, this perverse liberty / mixed with, ultimately, more fundamentally, just a lot. Well, ultimately, godlessness, specifically in the form of disbelieving in the inherent value of human life, which is kind of a perturbing development we see in the advancement of, for instance, like animal rights and plant life and this life and that. Like, the equating of human life with other forms of semi-sentient life is concerning, because on the one side you say that, oh, they're as good as us, but on the other side you say that we're as bad as them, or that we're no better than them. So it's like, I'm as valuable as a beetle. I'm sure some people would agree, maybe you. But anyway, that's enough rambling for tonight. So suffice it to say, I think there's a need for more intelligent thought put into how to effectively persuade people. And increasingly, I think it looks a lot more like Catholic missionaries than like these campus events that are inherently superficial, and I can't imagine actually really influencing people. Like, no one does any measurement. This is the thing. It's like being in business. It's like, you measure what matters. You either measure it or it doesn't matter. It's like, where's the measurement, like, showing like the effectiveness of these political organizations? They're all crap. Like, they don't measure it because there's no way to, because they don't know. They have no idea if it's actually working. It's like so stupid. I think the most effective way to change the country would be to just encourage birth rates among the people that you want to vote. Like, if you want Catholics to vote, or like if you want specific outcomes in political elections, increase the birth rates among those who are most likely to vote for that. So like conservatives, Catholics, and especially the Catholics are great, Mormons are great, because they're predisposed to have large families. So I think there's more fruit spent there. Like, you're talking about Pareto's principle, you probably accomplish more that way than by trying to convince the guys on the margin. It's just not worth it. Like, realize the system. Realize that it's a system of democracy where you're talking about units of people, and that these units replenish every 60 years. Well, there's a new wave every 20 years. So work with that. Realize that, okay, well, I don't have to convince anyone. I can just replace them. That's the most pragmatic version of it I've ever heard. I think it's so much more pragmatic. Anyway, and final word. All of our political views are descended from our, I think, ultimately a theological conception. So if we get people to believe in God, then we'll win every battle that follows therefrom.